When your best friends move in next door, you think life couldn't get any better. That's exactly how I felt the day our close family friends Mike and Sarah became our new neighbors. We'd known them for years, and they were the kind of friends you always wished lived closer. Mike and I had been tight since college, and our wives got along so well that we spent nearly every holiday together. Now, instead of seeing them twice a year, we could hang out whenever we wanted. And for a while, it was perfect. My wife, Emily, was thrilled. Sarah quickly became her partner in crime for morning coffees and yoga classes, and Mike and I had our weekend beer rituals locked down. Barbecues, game nights, double dates. It was like we had the kind of community you see in TV shows, the kind where everyone's happy, everything's convenient, and life feels normal, stable. But looking back, I realize how blind I was to what was really happening. It was a Wednesday evening when the first crack appeared. I came home from work a little later than usual, tired from a long meeting, and I saw Mike stepping out of my front door. The way he slammed the door behind him felt off. When he noticed me, his face shifted, like a guilty kid caught sneaking out after curfew. His jaw tightened for a second before he forced a smile. "Mike, everything good?" I asked, setting down my work bag. He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, man, nothing serious. Sarah was pissing me off, so I came over to see if you guys had any painkillers for my headache." That didn't sit right with me. Mike wasn't the type to walk into someone else's home uninvited. We were close, but not that close. I tried not to overthink it, though. I figured maybe he and Sarah had one of their usual blowouts. They fought a lot, more than Emily and I ever did, but I chalked it up to them just having a different dynamic. "Forget the pills," I said, patting him on the back. "Come have a beer instead. That'll cure your headache faster." We sat in my living room, a cold six-pack between us, and Mike let it all out. He vented about Sarah's constant nagging, how their fights were getting worse, and how he felt trapped. "Sometimes," he said with a bitter laugh, "I envy you, man. Emily's not like that. You've got it good." His words stuck with me longer than they should have. At the time, I thought it was just a compliment. But the way he said it, the way his eyes lingered just a little too long when he mentioned my wife, made something deep inside me stir. Emily was sitting nearby, pretending to be engrossed in a book, but I knew she was listening. She always listened. I caught her smirking once when Mike complimented her, and it rubbed me the wrong way. I couldn't explain why. It wasn't like she was doing anything wrong, but my gut didn't like it. Things got stranger after that. Emily would casually bring up ideas for us to do something with Mike and Sarah, more often than usual. Dinner plans, weekend trips, even spontaneous suggestions like, "Let's invite them over for a movie night." She was unusually excited whenever Mike was around, laughing harder at his jokes than she did at mine. I didn't want to seem paranoid. After all, it was Mike, my best friend. But the unease kept building, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Brushed it off for weeks, convincing myself I was imagining things. Jealousy, I thought. That's all it was. I was just overthinking everything because I wasn't used to having Mike and Sarah around so much. But that small voice in the back of my head refused to shut up. Then one day I forgot my work laptop at home. I had a presentation due that afternoon and I didn't have time to waste. I called Emily to ask if she could bring it to my office, but the call went straight to voicemail. I figured she was busy and didn't think much of it, so I decided to drive back and grab it myself. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. The curtains were half drawn and the house was too quiet. Normally, I'd hear the TV or Emily humming around the kitchen, but this time there was nothing. Just silence. I stepped inside and immediately noticed a jacket hanging on the back of the chair. Mike's jacket. My heart started pounding. "Emily?" I called out, but no one answered. I followed the faint sound of rustling coming from upstairs. With every step I took, my pulse raced faster, my mind racing through every possible explanation. Maybe Mike was here to fix something. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me. Maybe. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. Mike, my best friend, and my wife, in our bed. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I just stood there, frozen, like someone had sucked the life out of me and left an empty shell in its place. My legs gave out, and I sat on the floor, my hands clutching. my head as if that would stop the room from spinning. Mike scrambled to grab his clothes, mumbling something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. Emily sat there, wrapped in the sheets, tears forming in her eyes. But I didn't care. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. The walls were closing around me, and the weight of their betrayal crushed me. Everything I thought I knew about my life was gone in that moment, burned to ashes in front of me. I wish I could tell you I said something profound in that moment. But the truth is, I didn't say anything. I just sat there on the floor, staring at the two people who had ripped my life apart. Mike was halfway dressed, fumbling with his belt, his face pale as if he'd just seen his own funeral. "I'm sorry, man," he stammered, his voice shaking. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Like this. Like this. As if there's a right way to betray your best friend. As if sneaking into my house and sleeping with my wife had a manual on proper execution." Emily didn't speak. She just clutched the sheets to her chest, her eyes glistening with tears that meant nothing to me. I had loved her tears once, when she cried during sad movies or after heartfelt moments, but now they disgusted me. They weren't a sign of remorse. They were an admission of guilt. "Get out." My voice was cold, flat, empty. It didn't even sound like me. "Dude, please," Mike began, but I cut him off. I said, "Get the hell out of my house." Mike hesitated, but the look in my eyes must have told him I wasn't playing games. He grabbed his shoes and bolted, leaving me alone with Emily. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with betrayal and regret. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but I wasn't ready for her excuses. "Don't." I held up my hand, stopping her before she could utter a word. "Don't you dare try to explain this to me." But she did. Of course she did. They always do. It wasn't supposed to happen, I swear, she cried, her voice cracking. "We didn't plan this. I don't even know how it started." "How long?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "How long has this been going on?" Her silence was deafening. "Emily, answer me," I growled, rising to my feet. My hands were trembling, and I shoved them into my pockets to keep from doing something I'd regret. 3 months, she finally whispered, barely audible. "It started after one of our dinners with them. I didn't need to hear the rest." My stomach churned, and I felt like I was going to be sick. 3 months, 90 days of lies, sneaking around and making a fool out of me. I thought back to all the times I'd seen them laughing together, sharing drinks, exchanging glances. Every moment now seemed tainted, corrupted by the knowledge that they were sharing more than just friendly banter. "Did you ever love me?" My voice cracked as the words escaped, a mixture of anger and vulnerability I couldn't contain. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I do love you. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. Please, you have to believe me." But I didn't. Believe her. Love doesn't lead you to betray the person you promised to spend your life with. Love doesn't make you sneak around with your husband's best friend while he's at work. Love doesn't destroy a family. I grabbed my car keys without another word. Staying in that house felt unbearable, like the walls were closing in on me. I drove aimlessly, the city blurring past me as tears streamed down my face. I hated that I was crying. I hated how weak it made me feel, but I couldn't stop. The memories flooded in, each one slicing through me like a blade. Our wedding day, the way she smiled at me as she walked down the aisle, the honeymoon in Hawaii where we made promises under the stars, the time we found out she was pregnant, even though she later miscarried. I had held her through that, wiped away her tears, and reassured her that we'd try again when the time was right. And now, this. I parked in an empty lot near a park we used to visit. The playground was deserted and the swings swayed gently in the evening breeze. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. My mind raced, jumping from anger to sadness to confusion and back again. I felt humiliated. How had I not seen the signs? Was I really that blind, or had I just ignored the obvious because I didn't want to believe my life wasn't perfect? I thought about the nights she came home late from running errands, the texts she'd smile at before quickly locking her phone. All the moments that should have set off alarms but didn't because I trusted her. I trusted her. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had built my entire life around this woman, shared my dreams, my struggles, my future, and she had destroyed it without a second thought. I scrolled through my phone, my fingers hovering over Mike's contact. I wanted to call him, scream at him, threaten him, do something to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But I knew it wouldn't help. He didn't deserve my rage. Neither of them did. I needed a plan. I couldn't let them walk away from this without consequences. I wasn't just going to roll over and be the guy everyone pitied, the husband whose wife cheated on him while his best friend laughed behind his back. No, I would make sure they both regretted this. Revenge wasn't just an option. It was the only thing keeping me sane, but I wouldn't rush it. I'd take my time, make sure everything was perfect. The way they had planned their little affair, I'd planned their downfall, but this time I wouldn't be the fool. I wiped my face and took a deep breath. The pain was still there, festering like an open wound, but underneath it, something darker was growing. Anger, resentment, the kind of fury that doesn't burn out easily. By the time I drove back home that night, I wasn't the same man who had left. The version of me who loved Emily unconditionally was gone. In his place was someone colder, someone ready to make them both suffer for what they did, and I had the perfect way to start. When I got home that night, the house was dark. Emily had locked herself in the bedroom. Good. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want her tears, her apologies, or her lies. I slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning as I crafted the plan that would make them wish they had never crossed me. You see, I wasn't going to confront Mike again. That's what they'd expect. Me losing my mind, screaming, punching walls, and begging for explanations. But I wasn't giving them that satisfaction. I wasn't going to be the guy who breaks down. I was going to be the guy who breaks them. The first step? Getting evidence. If Emily wanted to destroy our marriage, then I was going to make sure she couldn't walk away without consequences. The next morning I was cold and calculated. No yelling, no dramatic accusations. I acted like nothing had happened. Emily looked like she hadn't slept, her face swollen from crying. Good. She deserved that. I calmly told her I needed space and that I'd be staying with a friend for a few days. I didn't give her the chance to argue. I packed a bag, grabbed my laptop, and drove to a hotel across town. My friend, Matt, worked in IT, and he owed me a favor. Within a few hours, I had access to Emily's phone records, emails, and text messages. What I found wasn't just heartbreaking. It was rage-inducing. There were hundreds of texts between her and Mike, each one a dagger to the chest. Late-night messages, inside jokes, photos that made me sick to my stomach. They'd been meeting at our house, in our bed, while I was at work, while I was out running errands, even while I was visiting my parents for the weekend. They had used every opportunity to stab me in the back. And the worst part? They didn't even try to hide it. They joked about how clueless I was. One message from Mike read, "He has no idea, poor guy." I clenched my fists so hard I thought my knuckles would split open. But I wasn't done digging. I found something even more disgusting. They had been talking about running away together. Not just an affair, a future. They were planning to leave Sarah and me behind like discarded trash. That's when I realized that destroying their little fantasy wasn't enough. I needed to burn it to the ground. The next day, I made my first move. I met Sarah for coffee under the pretense of needing advice about Emily. She had no idea what was coming. When I showed her the screenshots of Mike and Emily's texts, her face went pale and she started shaking. She wasn't just hurt, she was furious. She confessed that she had suspected something but didn't have proof until now. "I want to ruin him," she said, her voice cold. "Then let's ruin them both," I replied. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Sarah, it turned out, had dirt on Mike that even I couldn't have imagined. He had been hiding money in a secret bank account, money he had stolen from their joint savings. She had access to his financial records, and she promised to hit him where it hurt, his wallet. Meanwhile, I had my own moves to make. I waited until Emily was at the gym and returned home to install hidden cameras throughout the house. I wanted everything on record, their conversations, their meetings, and any other betrayal they planned. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to expose them. A week later, I got exactly what I needed. They thought they were safe, that I had moved on and was too heartbroken to notice what was happening. But the cameras told a different story. I watched as Mike snuck into my house while I was at work, as Emily welcomed him with open arms, as they laughed about how smoothly everything was going. I copied the footage onto a flash drive and sent it anonymously to Mike's boss. He worked at a prestigious law firm, one that didn't tolerate scandal or bad press. Within 48 hours, Mike was fired. But that wasn't enough. Sarah followed through on her promise. She drained the hidden bank account and filed for divorce, taking half of everything he owned and leaving him penniless. She kicked him out of their house, and when he tried to stay with Emily, she turned him away. I had already told her that. I was filing for divorce as well, and I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I leaked the footage online. I wasn't subtle about it either. I posted it in local forums, where their friends and co-workers could see it. Within days, Emily and Mike became the talk of the town. Their reputations were destroyed. I thought it would feel satisfying, but it didn't. It was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The revenge didn't heal the wounds. It just made them deeper. A few weeks later, Emily showed up at the hotel where I was staying. Her eyes were hollow, her makeup smeared from crying. "Please," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I let her in, but not because I wanted to hear her out. I wanted to see her face when I delivered the final blow. "There's nothing left to say," I told her, my voice devoid of emotion. "I gave you everything, Emily. I trusted you, and you threw it all away for a fling with my best friend." "It wasn't just a fling," she sobbed. "I made a mistake, but I still love you." "I can fix this. We can fix this," I laughed bitterly. "There's nothing to fix. You didn't just destroy our marriage. You destroyed the version of me who would have forgiven you. That person's gone." I handed her the divorce papers and watched as her hands trembled. I had made sure the terms were brutal. She wasn't, walking away with anything but the guilt of what she had done. As she left, I felt an overwhelming emptiness. I had won. I had taken everything from them, just like they had taken everything from me. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like ashes. I stared out the window as the rain began to fall, the sound of droplets hitting the glass echoing in the silence of the room. Revenge had consumed me, but it hadn't brought me peace. I thought about what life would be like now. I'd move on eventually. Maybe I'd find someone new, someone who wouldn't betray me. But for now, I was just a broken man with nothing but memories of a life that had been ripped away. Revenge had given me justice, but it had also left me hollow. And as much as I hated to admit it, I missed the man I used to be, the man who believed in love, in loyalty, in happily ever afters. Now I knew better. Happily ever afters were just another lie, and I would never believe in them again.